In 1963, General Motors enforced one strict rule. No mid-size car could carry an engine larger than 330 cubic inches. Violating it could end your career. But three Pontiac engineers, John DeLorean, Bill Collins, and Russ G., didn't bend that rule. They broke it. They smuggled a 389 cubic inch V8 into a platform never meant to hold one, crowned it with 3 two-barrel carburetors, and ignited the American muscle car era. What General Motors' own oversight committee failed to catch would reshape an entire industry, all because of one loophole nobody thought to close. General Motors in the early 1960s was not a playground for rule breakers. Inside its vast bureaucracy, the Engineering Policy Committee set the boundaries, literally. Their formula was simple: no more than 1 cubic inch of engine displacement for every 10 pounds of a car's weight. For the new generation of mid-size cars, that meant a hard ceiling of 330 cubic inches. The intent was clear. General Motors wanted to keep performance in check, control fuel consumption, and avoid the growing headache of rising insurance costs. The committee's reach extended across every division: Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, ensuring no single brand could outgun the others or threaten the company's full-size flagships. This was not just a technical guideline, it was a corporate firewall designed to prevent internal competition and keep the market predictable. The rule applied to every new model specification that crossed the committee's desk. If a division wanted to launch a mid-size car, the biggest engine they could officially install was 330 cubic inches. Anything larger was off the table, no matter how much engineering talent or customer demand existed. On paper, the restrictions seemed airtight. The committee reviewed blueprints, weighed curb weights, and signed off on every engine configuration before a car could reach production. The goal was to prevent a horsepower race from breaking out within General Motors' own walls, a lesson learned from past battles between Chevrolet and Pontiac in the 1950s. But the policy had a blind spot. It focused on base model specifications, not optional equipment. The review process scrutinized standard engines, but option packages, especially those installed at the dealer level, often slipped through with less attention. This gap was never meant to be an invitation, but it left just enough room for someone willing to push the limits. The 330 cubic inch rule shaped every decision Pontiac's engineers would make. It set the boundaries, but it also defined what it meant to cross them. The story of the 389 Tri-Power begins here, in the shadow of a rule designed to keep power in check, and the quiet realization that every firewall has a weak spot if you know where to look. Inside Pontiac's engineering offices in late 1962, the air was thick with risk and possibility. John DeLorean, restless and sharp, gathered Bill Collins and Russ G. for a series of closed-door meetings. On the table was a plan to slip a 389 cubic inch V8 into the new Tempest Le Mans, knowing full well that General Motors' 330 cubic inch limit for mid-size cars was not just a guideline, it was gospel. But DeLorean saw a loophole. The committee's rule applied to standard engines, not optional equipment. If the 389 could be classified as an option hidden in the paperwork as code W62, It might never cross the desks of the Engineering Policy Committee at all. Collins ran the numbers. The Tempest's 115-inch wheelbase and 3,400-pound curb weight would never officially allow a 389, but with a few tweaks, the big V8 could fit. G, meanwhile, drafted the documents to present the engine as a standalone package, not a model specification, a technical sleight of hand that only worked if no one looked too closely. DeLorean later described the move as smuggling the engine past General Motors' corporate oversight, a phrase that would become legend among muscle car fans. The trio's gamble moved quickly from theory to hardware. In early 1963, a prototype Tempest arrived in the engineering garage, its hood concealing the 389. DeLorean himself took the first test drive, returning with a grin and a short report. The combination not only worked, it transformed the car. The 389's power, when paired with the Tempest's lighter frame, delivered a driving experience that felt raw and immediate, far beyond anything the division had built before. With the prototype proven, the team filed the W62 option for production, pricing it at $295.90, low enough to fly under the radar, yet high enough to cover the cost of the big engine, dual exhaust, and unique trim. The option would not appear as a model on the order sheets, but as a performance package, available to anyone who checked the right box at the dealership. No formal memo went to the committee. No one outside Pontiac's walls was the wiser. By the time the 1964 model year rolled around, the 389-powered Tempest, now branded GTO, was ready for the public. The engineers had taken a corporate firewall and turned it into a secret passage. Their act of defense, tucked behind a 3-digit option code, set off a chain reaction that changed the American car market forever. 3 carburetors, lined up like sentries across a cast iron intake, gave the 389 Tri-Power its signature. At first glance, the setup looked almost excessive. 3 Rochester 2-barrel carburetors perched on a single manifold, each with its own job. The center carburetor was the workhorse. It handled all the low-speed duties, idle, cruising, stop-and-go traffic. Its jets, factory number 55, were tuned for smooth starts and steady running, feeding just enough fuel to keep the big V8 civilized around town. But the real magic happened when the throttle opened past 1/3. Linkage geometry, engineered with a bell crank ratio of 1 to 2.2, waited patiently until the pedal crossed a certain threshold. Then and only then, the outer carburetors came alive. Their throttle plates, locked at idle, snapped open in sync with the driver's right foot, unleashing a surge of air and fuel that transformed the engine's character. This was not a simple on-off switch. It was a progressive handoff, with the outer carburetors blending in as the demand for power climbed. At full throttle, all 3 carburetors pulled together, delivering a combined 730 cubic feet per minute of air, enough to keep the 389 fed well past 5,000 RRPM. The intake manifold itself was a piece of functional sculpture. Each runner was cast to match the velocity and volume needs of its partner carburetor, with the center runner slightly longer to stabilize idle and the outer runners tuned for high-speed flow. The fuel lines split at a T-junction, sending equal supply to each bowl. Only the center carburetor got an idle mixture screw and a functional choke. The outer carburetors had their idle circuits blocked off at the factory, a detail that kept cold starts clean and eliminated the risk of flooding. Every part number told a story. Center carburetors for automatics wore the digits 70230077, while 4 speed cars got 70230075. The manifold was stamped 53552, a mark that collectors still hunt for. Even the orientation of the fuel inlets, forward for the center and right-facing for the outer carburetors, became a sign of authenticity. For those who tried to swap in aftermarket jets or tinker with the linkage, period service manuals warned against upsetting the delicate balance. The Tri-Power was at its best when left as Pontiac intended, a system that could idle like a family sedan, but with a deep press of the throttle, snap awake, and pull with a force that felt almost illicit. No other factory setup of the era delivered power quite like this. The Tri-Power's progressive delivery made the engine feel docile at low speeds and wild when provoked, a dual nature that became its trademark. For every gearhead who ever dreamed of triple carburetors, this was the blueprint, purpose-built, unmistakable, and always ready to break out of the ordinary. Magazine editors lined up for a chance behind the wheel. The numbers that came back from those early road tests did not just meet expectations, they rewrote them. Pontiac's 389 Tri-Power GTO, officially rated at 348 horsepower, did 0 to 60 in 7.6 seconds, with the quarter-mile flashing by in 15.5 seconds at 88 miles per hour. For 1964, those figures put the GTO in a class of its own, quicker than most European sports cars, and well ahead of any rival Detroit had on showroom floors. The secret was the way the Tri-Power system delivered its punch. At low speeds, the car felt almost tame, idling smoothly on the center carburetor. But bury the throttle, and the 2 outer carburetors snapped open in unison. Suddenly, all 3 barrels fed fuel and air into the 389, unleashing a surge of acceleration testers described as explosive and relentless. The progressive linkage meant there was no lag, no hesitation, just a clean, hard pull all the way to redline. Numbers alone could not capture the sensation, but they told a clear story. The GTO's 0 to 60 time of 7.6 seconds did not just best the Chevrolet 327 or Ford's 390, it challenged cars twice its price. The quarter mile in 15.5 seconds at 88 miles per hour made it the fastest American production car in its weight class, and it did it for less than $3,500 out the door, including the $295.90 Tri-Power option. Testers from Motor Trend and Car and Driver praised the GTO's balance of brute force and everyday drivability. The Tri-Power setup gave drivers the best of both worlds, docile manners in traffic and a hair-trigger response when the road opened up. In an era when most family sedans struggled to break 10 seconds to 60, the GTO's numbers landed like a thunderclap. Pontiac's engineers had turned a regulatory loophole into a performance benchmark, and the rest of the industry was suddenly on notice. As word spread, demand outpaced even Pontiac's boldest forecasts. But the real proof was in the stopwatch. The 389 Tri-Power did not just look fast, it delivered every time the pedal hit the floor. Pontiac's gamble hit the showroom floor in the fall of 1963. The GTO package, tucked away as a $295.90 option on the Tempest Le Mans, offered buyers a shot at 348 horsepower and the kind of acceleration usually reserved for European exotica. No other mid-size American car could touch it for the money. The GTO name, borrowed from Ferrari's Gran Turismo Omologato, sparked a quiet feud across the Atlantic. Enzo Ferrari bristled at the appropriation, but Pontiac's marketing team pressed ahead, turning the controversy into free publicity. Dealers barely had time to clear space on their lots before the first wave of orders arrived. Pontiac's product planners, expecting a modest 10,000 sales for the first year, watched as the numbers soared past every forecast. By the end of 1964, 32,450 GTOs had left the factory, more than triple the original estimate. The GTO wasn't just a car, it was a statement. Word spread that for less than $3,500, anyone could buy a machine that could outrun almost anything on the road. The public's response wasn't just enthusiastic, it was overwhelming. Pontiac's act of defiance had become a phenomenon, and Detroit's competitors took note. Detroit's response was immediate and decisive. The moment Pontiac's 389 Tri-Power GTO hit the streets, rival divisions scrambled to catch up. Ford fast-tracked its own answer, rolling out the Mustang GT with the Hypo 289 V8 for 1965, and soon after, the Shelby GT 350. Chevrolet, unwilling to be outshined, rushed the Chevelle SS 396 into production. Its 325 horsepower big block V8 aimed squarely at the GTO's crown. Oldsmobile fired back with the 442, packaging a 400 cubic inch engine and heavy-duty suspension into its mid-size frame. Buick entered the fray with the Grand Sport, another 400-inch bruiser, while Chrysler's Dodge and Plymouth divisions unleashed the 426 Street Hemi, a brute force statement that Detroit's horsepower war was now out in the open. What began as a quiet act of rebellion inside Pontiac's engineering offices had ignited a full-scale arms race. Each manufacturer hustled to outdo the last, offering ever larger engines and bolder performance packages for their intermediate models. The stakes grew with every new release. More power, more speed, and more swagger, all aimed at a generation hungry for affordable thrills. The muscle car era had officially arrived, and the industry's old rules were falling away, one option code at a time. The surge in muscle car sales brought an unexpected reckoning. As Tri-Power GTOs and their rivals multiplied on American roads, insurance companies took notice. By 1965, carriers began flagging high-performance models as high risk, especially for drivers under 25. Annual premiums for a 348 horsepower GTO could jump by half or even double compared to a standard sedan. The Insurance Services Office issued warnings that midsize cars with big engines posed outsized liability, and the American Automobile Association echoed those concerns. Suddenly, the same option package that made the GTO irresistible became a red flag for underwriters. Pressure mounted inside General Motors. Internal memos from the Vehicle Safety and Liability Division linked rising insurance costs directly to the GTO and its competitors. Executives worried that the brand's performance image was becoming a liability both in the press and on the company's balance sheet. In June 1966, Pontiac received its directive. The Tri-Power setup, with its 3 carburetors and progressive linkage, would be withdrawn after the model year. The official reasons cited market-driven insurance cost considerations and a need to simplify manufacturing. A single Rochester Quadrajet 4-barrel would take its place, ending the tri-power era, not with a bang, but with a memo. The cost of Pontiac's rule-breaking success had come due, paid in premiums and policy reviews, and the door that once let the 389 slip through quietly swung shut. The final year of the Tri-Power GTO saw Pontiac engineers push their creation to its technical peak. For 1966, the 389 received a factory high-lift camshaft, catalogued as part number 9779068, paired with larger intake and exhaust valves and a compression ratio of 10:1. This setup delivered an advertised 360 horsepower, the highest factory rating for any tri-power GTO. Valve timing was sharpened for stronger mid-range pull, while the progressive linkage allowed all 3 Rochester carbs to open smoothly under full throttle. Only a limited run of these high-output engines left the assembly line before the corporate clampdown took effect. With the Tri-Power's days numbered, Pontiac signed off with its most potent street engine yet, a final salute to the rule breakers who turned a loophole into legend. Original Tri-Power GTOs now command a following that borders on obsession. Collectors pore over VIN plates and factory build sheets, hunting for the elusive TP code or a correct 53552 manifold casting, details that separate genuine cars from clever replicas. The orientation of the fuel inlets, the right-facing outlets on the outer carbs, even the tiniest casting marks become proof of authenticity. Restoration shops specialize in tracking down period-correct center carburetors, 702377 for automatics, 702375 for 4 speeds, while others scour swap meets for linkage hardware that matches factory geometry. Rarity of original parts, especially unmolested manifolds and untouched carb sets, drives prices ever higher. The Tri-Power restoration community thrives on this detective work, treating each component as a piece of automotive history that must be verified and preserved. The Tri-Power GTO did more than spark a horsepower race. It gave young Americans a new sense of possibility. For the first time, speed and style were not reserved for the wealthy or the well-connected. With a price tag that put 348 horsepower within reach, the GTO became a rite of passage for a new generation. It was a car you could buy on a junior executive salary, drive to work on Friday, and race on Saturday night. Detroit's rivals took notice, and soon every showroom had its own answer, each promising more muscle for less money. The Tri-Power's real legacy is this. It proved that rebellion could be sold by the key, and that the dream of fast, affordable performance could belong to anyone willing to sign for it. Pontiac did not invent the American 5.8. They just figured out that 3 carburetors, 1 rule broken, and the right name could change everything. Corporate defiance built the 389 Tri-Power, 3 Rochester carburetors, 348 horsepower, 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds, and an option priced at $295.90 that shattered every sales forecast. Insurance crackdowns and GM policy ended the run in 1966, but the blueprint endures. affordable, aspirational speed for all. Pontiac did not invent the American 5.8. They just figured out that 3 carburetors, 1 rule broken, and the right name could change everything.